Welcome to College Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: the study was retracted years ago. How did it get into guidelines for pregnant women? How geopolitics caught up with Canada. Andrew Peasley accounts for 4 TDs in Wyoming's 42-6 victory over Nevada. Scientists are racing to protect grass from climate change. Dead, wounded or AWOL, the voices of desperate Russian soldiers trying to get out of the Ukraine war. The study was retracted years ago. How did it get into guidelines for pregnant women? The Sydney Morning Herald. A recent article in The Age highlights concerns about the scientific foundations behind health recommendations, specifically related to a study on the use of progesterone to prevent preterm births. The study was included in a 2017 meta-analysis funded by the US government, but the underlying study was later retracted due to ethical concerns. When the retracted study was removed from the meta-analysis, the results changed, suggesting that progesterone had no effect on preventing preterm births. The article raises questions about the increasing obscurity of scientific evidence behind health recommendations and the potential risks for patients. How geopolitics caught up with Canada. Financial Times. Canada's long-held view of itself as a fireproof house is being challenged as the country finds itself entangled in foreign policy dilemmas with India and China. Canada has accused China of interfering in its domestic politics and criticized the Chinese military for flying dangerously close to its aircraft. It has also accused India of being involved in the fatal shooting of a Canadian Sikh. The country is grappling with how to conduct a foreign policy that aligns with its political identity while authoritarian governments gain influence and economic power shifts to Asia. The changing global landscape has led Canada to rely on 2 principles: defending its sovereignty and employing pragmatic diplomacy to engage with nations with different perspectives to prevent conflicts. Canada is increasing its presence in the Indo-Pacific and boosting its diplomatic and military presence in the region. It is also considering engagement with China and India to stabilize relations. While Canada is taking a firm stance against China's actions, it is also mindful of the need for constructive dialogue. However, the opposition Conservative Party is pressuring Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to be tough on China, which may limit his ability to engage in dialogue. Andrew Peasley accounts for 4 TDs in Wyoming's 42-6 victory over Nevada. Associated Press. Wyoming defeated Nevada 42-6 in a college football game on Saturday night. Wyoming quarterback Andrew Peasley threw 2 touchdown passes and ran for 2 more scores. Peasley completed 12 of 18 passes for 165 yards and added 96 yards on the ground. Wyoming ended its regular season with a record of 8-4. Nevada, on the other hand, finished their season with a record of 2-10. Scientists are racing to protect grass from climate change. Wall Street Journal. Scientists in New Zealand are developing new varieties of pasture plants to help protect the global food supply from the threat of climate change. The researchers hope to develop plants that can tolerate high temperatures, less rain and more variability in weather that is expected from climate change. The aim of the project is to prevent the grass and other plants that livestock eat from wilting in extreme heat and drought. The research is not without its challenges. A plant variety that works well in one area may not be suitable a few miles away. The project is particularly important for New Zealand, the world's largest dairy exporter and one of the biggest sellers of meat to the US, as the country has already experienced its warmest year on record. Less grass growing in pastures could mean that farmers either have to spend more on buying feed for their herds or reduce the number of animals on their farms. This could lead to more expensive food for consumers. Dead, wounded or AWOL, the voices of desperate Russian soldiers trying to get out of the Ukraine war. Associated Press. Audio intercepts from Russian soldiers on the front lines in Ukraine reveal a growing desire among soldiers to leave the conflict. The recordings, obtained by the Associated Press, offer a rare glimpse into the war from the perspective of Russian soldiers. The calls reveal the progression of the war, from professional soldiers to men from all walks of life who are compelled to serve in grueling conditions. The soldiers express desperation, fear, and disillusionment with the war, with many feeling deceived about the nature of their service. Some soldiers describe the conflict as simply genocide and express a desire for the war to end. Legal cases against soldiers who refuse to fight have also been on the rise in Russia. The identities of the soldiers in the calls were verified by speaking with relatives and soldiers still at war in Ukraine. Milton runs for 156 yards and 2 TDs. Number 1 Georgia holds off Georgia Tech 31-23. Associated Press. Number 1 Georgia defeats Georgia Tech 31-23 to complete a 3rd consecutive undefeated regular season. Kendall Milton ran for a career-high 156 yards and 2 touchdowns in the victory. The Bulldogs will face number 8 Alabama in the SEC championship game next Saturday. Georgia Tech awaits its first bowl invitation since 2018. West Virginia QB Green's fourth TD is a 29-yard pass in final minute for a 34-31 win at Baylor. Associated Press. West Virginia beat Baylor 34-31 in a Big 12 conference game on Saturday night. West Virginia quarterback Garrett Green threw for 269 yards and 2 touchdowns, including the game-winning 29-yard pass to running back Jaheim White with 23 seconds left. Baylor had scored 17 consecutive points in the second half to take a 31-27 lead before a missed field goal. West Virginia finished the season 8-4, while Baylor finished 4-8. Wasabi effective in improving memory of elderly. Study. Japan Times. A study conducted by Japanese food manufacturer Kinjirishi and Tohoku University has found that wasabi, a traditional Japanese spice, may enhance the memory and cognitive abilities of elderly people. The study focused on a compound called hexarophane, which is found in small quantities in the plant's roots and rhizomes. Hexarophane has antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects on the body, and the research aimed to determine if it also has a positive impact on cognitive function for healthy adults over the age of 60. Iowa State relies on big plays, fourth down stop for snowy 42-35 win over number 19 K-State. Associated Press. Iowa State beat Kansas State 42-35 on Saturday in college football, thanks to a strong performance from Abu Sama III, who ran for 276 yards and 3 touchdowns. Iowa State's Rocco Becht also threw for 230 yards and 3 scores. Kansas State had the opportunity to tie the game in the final minute but couldn't convert on fourth down. Virginia Tech spins an offensive record en route of Virginia. Washington Post. Virginia Tech has won the Commonwealth Cup for the 18th time in 19 meetings after defeating Virginia 55-17 on Saturday. The game was the most lopsided meeting since 2016, with the Hokies scoring 500 yards of offense and 252 rushing yards. The win ensured Virginia Tech achieved bowl eligibility for the 29th time in 30 full seasons. Daquan Felton contributed 133 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns, while Karen Drones posted 244 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Talia Tagovailoa breaks Big Ten passing mark as Maryland beats Rutgers. Washington Post. Talia Tagovailoa became the Big Ten's all-time leading passer during Maryland's 42-24 win over Rutgers, throwing for 361 yards and 3 touchdowns. Tagovailoa, the younger brother of Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua, entered the game needing 268 yards to surpass Curtis Painter's conference record. Maryland led 28-3 early in the second quarter and Tagovailoa had the record by halftime. Oklahoma WR DJ Graham to enter the transfer portal. Yahoo! Oklahoma Sooners cornerback and wide receiver DJ Graham has entered the transfer portal with 2 years of eligibility remaining. Graham made the decision after much prayer and consultation with his parents. Graham originally played cornerback for the Sooners before switching to wide receiver last offseason. He suffered an injury during the 2023 season and didn't see much playing time. With the emergence of other wide receivers on the team, Graham was likely going to be squeezed out of the rotation next season. Graham has great ball skills and will be looking for an opportunity to make an impact at his next school. Yahoo Top 10, how will a wild rivalry weekend shake up the rankings? Yahoo! The March Madness motto can be used this weekend by plenty of CFP contenders. Washington, Alabama, Florida State, Michigan and even Georgia fought off serious challenges in their respected rivalry games on Saturday. Brown sparks South Florida over Charlotte 48-14, Bulls eligible for bowl game. Associated Press. South Florida defeated Charlotte 48-14 to become eligible for a bowl game. South Florida quarterback Byram Brown threw 4 touchdown passes and ran for a score. Charlotte took an early lead but South Florida tied the game and then took the lead with a trick play touchdown. South Florida went on to dominate the game, with Charlotte only managing to score 1 more touchdown. Brown completed 22 of 30 passes for 253 yards with 1 interception for South Florida. Finley throws 3 TD passes, Texas ST scores first 24 points and then holds off South Alabama, 52-44. Associated Press. Texas State defeated South Alabama 52-44 in a close college football game. Texas State scored 24 points in the first quarter and led 31-17 at halftime. South Alabama fought back in the second half, with Desmond Trotter throwing 4 touchdown passes. However, Texas State held on to secure the victory. TJ Finley had a strong performance, throwing 3 touchdown passes for Texas State. Ismail Mahdi rushed for 97 yards and a touchdown, while Jamal Jeter also scored a touchdown for Texas State. Trotter finished with 220 passing yards and 4 touchdowns for South Alabama. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six from the 6 Degrees World, here to bring you a recap of some interesting news stories from around the globe. Let's dive in. First up, we have a concerning report about a study on the use of progesterone to prevent preterm births. It turns out that this study was retracted years ago due to ethical concerns, but somehow it made its way into health guidelines for pregnant women. This raises questions about the scientific foundations behind health recommendations and the potential risks for patients. I mean, if we can't even trust the studies that inform our health guidelines, what can we trust? In other news, Canada is finding itself caught up in some foreign policy dilemmas with China and India. The country is grappling with how to navigate a changing global landscape while defending its sovereignty and engaging in pragmatic diplomacy. It's like they're trying to dance with 2 partners at once, but these partners have very different moves. It's a tough position to be in, but Canada is stepping up its presence in the Indo-Pacific and considering engagement with China and India to stabilize relations. Let's hope they can find a way to keep the peace and protect their interests. On a lighter note, let's talk sports. Wyoming had a big victory over Nevada in college football, thanks to quarterback Andrew Peasley, who accounted for 4 touchdowns. And speaking of college football, Georgia and Iowa State both had impressive wins to cap off undefeated regular seasons. Georgia will now face Alabama in the SEC championship game, and Iowa State's Abu Sama III ran for a whopping 276 yards and 3 touchdowns. These teams are on fire. Now let's switch gears to some scientific research. Scientists in New Zealand are working on developing new varieties of pasture plants that can withstand the challenges of climate change. They want to ensure that livestock have enough to eat, even in extreme heat and drought conditions. This research is especially important for New Zealand, a major dairy exporter and meat seller. We don't want our cows going hungry or our food prices going up, do we? Moving on, we have some fascinating audio intercepts from Russian soldiers in Ukraine. These soldiers are expressing desperation, fear, and disillusionment with the war, with some even calling it simply genocide. It's a rare glimpse into the conflict from the perspective of the soldiers on the ground. It just goes to show that war is never as glamorous or heroic as it's often portrayed. Let's hope for a swift end to this conflict and for these soldiers to find peace. And finally, we have some interesting findings from a study conducted in Japan. It turns out that wasabi, that spicy green stuff we love with sushi, may actually enhance the memory and cognitive abilities of elderly people. Who would have thought that a little kick of wasabi could give your brain a boost? It just goes to show that sometimes the most unexpected things can have surprising benefits. Well, that's all the news we have for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this recap from the 6 Degrees World. Now it's your turn to join the conversation. What are your thoughts on these stories? Do you have any questions for me? Let's hear what you have to say. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.